Check, check. we go. Yep. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019 Dana Point City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All members of the City Council are present.
Thank you. Mr. Munoz, is there a need for closed session?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We have 3 items this evening. The first is a conference with legal counsel as a result of anticipated litigation due to the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. We have 1 case to discuss. Next, we have a conference with legal counsel as a result of existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. We have 2 cases to discuss. The first is the City of Dana Point versus New Method Wellness, Inc., Orange County Superior Court case number 302017009041169. Next is the matter of the City of Dana Point versus the Sunshine Group, also known as the Seaside Inn, Orange County Superior Court case number 3020170091590. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and recess the City Council meeting until 6 p.m. Welcome to the Dana Point City Council meeting of December 3rd, 2019. We will now reconvene our meeting. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Vic Sort. Please remain standing for the invocation. It will be provided this evening by OCFA Chaplain Dave Keene. Who is a Dana Point resident?
Face the colors. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Almighty God, we thank you so much for your many blessings that in this holiday season we can take time to pause and to remember, to celebrate, and to draw close to those we love dearly. God, help us also to be careful, to be mindful of those around us who are less fortunate. Help us to think of others who are in need and to do what we can to help out. And we thank you for those who serve on this council. We thank you for their time and their sacrifice. We ask for wisdom now to be given to them, that the decisions that are made here be beneficial to all in our community. We pray in your precious name. Amen.
There are no presentations this evening. At this time, the city clerk will read the titles of the ordinances listed on the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any ordinance titles to read?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one second reading and adoption of an ordinance, and it's item number 7. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Dana Point, California, amending chapters 8.02, 8.03, 8.12, 8.14, 8.16, 8.20, 8.24, 8.26, 8.28, 8.30, 8.32, 8.34, 8.36, and 8.38 of Title 8 of the Dana Point Municipal Code, adopting by reference the California Codes of Regulations, Title 14, Parts 1 through 12, known and designated as the 2019 edition of the California Building Code, 2019 edition of the California Residential Code, 2019 edition of the California Electrical Code, 2019 edition of the California Plumbing Code, 2019 edition of the California Mechanical Code, 2019 edition of the California Administrative Code, 2019 edition of the California Reference Standards Code, 2019 edition of the California Energy Code, 2019 edition of the California Green Building Standards Code, 2019 edition of the California Historical Building Code, 2019 edition of the California Existing Building Code, and the 2019 edition of the California Fire Code, making amendments thereto and related actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the city council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Are there any items to be removed by the public? Madam Clerk.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. By staff?
No, sir.
Council? No? All right. I'll move the items, the consent calendar. Have a second by, Mr. Federico, I believe, seconded it. Any opposition? No? Okay, that passes unanimously. Brings us to public comments. There will be a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. At the mayor's discretion, the balance of public comments will be heard after the new business portion of the agenda. All comments are to be directed to the city council and should not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. State law prohibits the city council from taking action on a specific item unless it appears on the posted agenda. The city clerk will distribute any handouts you may have. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. And I just want to make sure everybody remembers we're in a small room. And if you need to have a conversation amongst yourself, please step out into the foyer. We have the TVs out there. You can continue to watch and there's sound. So we can hear you up here, whether even if you didn't think that we can, and it's kind of distracting as we're trying to do our business. So please step out. And if you have any signs, if you're not in the back row, please hold them at your chest. Don't hold them up blocking the view of our other residents. So our first public comment it will be from Craig Alexander, followed by Wayne Yost, and finally George Ray.
Merry Christmas. My name is Craig Alexander. I am a resident of Dana Point. I'm coming tonight to speak about the item 14 that was removed, so I'm here at public comments. I am opposed to the two Capistrano Unified School Bond measures, which would, if passed, give our communities over $700 million of debt with interest involved. The document I just gave you is a document coming right from Capo Unified in a presentation they made to one of their employee units, describing their district as a declining enrollment district. And yet Capo wants us to pass a bond to make improvements to all the schools. And I checked the list of both measures, and all of the schools in the city of Dana Point and as the surrounding cities affected are listed. This begs the question, why are they doing this? They haven't explained in the measure what they're doing when they have a declining enrollment. Are they going to close buildings after spending millions of dollars on them? Or are they not going to spend the money they say they're asking for the public to pay for? Speaking of which, they are also asking us to pay for many of the same items they asked us to pay for in Measure A that was passed in 1999, and for which we still are paying on our property tax bills. Things like asbestos removal, which has been banned since the 60s. That also begs the question, what did they do with that prior money? Why are they asking us to come and pay for it again? And also, CUSD is putting $0 of its own into the building of these projects. They are asking the public to pay for it all. Why aren't they budgeting to pay it for some of it themselves, if not all of it? Well, one of the reasons they always say they have no funds. Over 90% of their budget is for adults' salaries and benefits. Let me give you an example from transparentcalifornia.com. Superintendent Kristen Vital in salary and benefits received last year $425,000. Deputy Superintendent Clark Hampton, $300,000. In 2018, the governor of California, $285,000. Lieutenant Governor then Gavin Newsom, $204,000. They need to learn how to budget properly. This city hall was built when the prior city council paid cash after saving for that. The same with the city of Laguna Niguel. Why isn't Capo operating properly? For those reasons, I oppose, and others, I oppose these measures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Wayne Yost.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, members of city staff, members of our community. My name is Wayne Yost, 37-year resident of Dana Point, commander of Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 9934. Veterans of Foreign Wars in Dana Point is composed of over 400 combat veterans. Many of you have seen us in visible events such as Winterfest, the summer concert series, the Halloween party that we have, Festival of Wales Parade. However, perhaps you're not aware of our outreach. Now, this is the season of giving traditionally, Thanksgiving through Christmas. However, our VFW post is the season of giving every single day. To date, this year through middle November, our post has given over $50,000 in financial aid to help veterans who are on the verge of becoming homeless or who have recently become homeless get back into a normalized lifestyle. We can only do this through the generous contributions of our community. And believe me, they have been very generous. Also, I want to thank the city and the city staff for allowing us to put on these events through many of these public events. Lastly, I wanted to mention that we have Winterfest coming up this Saturday. It's a very fun-filled family event. We'll have Santa there, pony rides, I believe ice skating rink set up, and the VFW will be doing a barbecue at a very nominal fee for food. And I would encourage all of our family to come out and support our city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Yost. George Ray.
Isn't that the button to raise it up? No. There we go. Mr. Mayor and Councilman, my name is George Ray. I live in Capistrano Beach, and I am a short-term rental owner and operator. As you may be aware, my wife did provide to all of you and to Mr. Denny a letter outlining our ideas on how to move forward on a short-term rental ordinance. We also included letters from our guests supporting our opinion that there are a number of visitors that require facilities like ours in order to visit our lovely community. These comments from our guests proves to us that these short-term rentals is a needed niche in the hospitality industry to better serve our main source of income, TOD taxes, and the sales from our restaurants and retailers that to support the industry. The recommendations in our letter was our reason for our recommendations, in my view, is obvious, and it regards the last council meeting. All of you guys are smart and highly educated and dedicated to the city. However, at the end of the last council meeting concerning short-term rentals, all of you, I hate to say this, was a little bit like Keystone Cops in a Charlie Chaplin movie in that it was going in every different direction. I say this not to be disparaging, you collective abilities, but to indicate the difficulty and complexity of this issue, considering that we do have an election and that ultimately the Coastal Commission, which has some, I believe, jurisdiction over this matter, so there has to be some accommodations, assuming that there is or people want to have a short-term rental agreement. Our suggestions were that you select 3 or 4 members from the short-term rental industry, 3 or 4 members of the citizens that are opposed to it, chaired by a senior staff member, and that we come up with, a particular short-term rental organizations. Now, I have some experience, but that we should also coordinate with the Coastal Commission staff in that no matter what happens here, that not only do you have to approve it, but so does the Coastal Commission. And I recognize that just because our committee does it or we get approval of the city staff doesn't guarantee your approval nor the Coastal Commission, but it certainly increases the opportunity to do that. And I say that in that as a good analog, it's similar to getting a major tenant coming in. And I have a lot of experience in this. So if you had a Home Depot come into town, they have their own criteria. And they just don't do what the city wants. And if the city wants a Home Depot, you'll kind of compromise to their criteria. So there's an advantage to go together. And with the city staff being the lead and the coordination of that, that's our suggestion. And hopefully it's considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Madam Clerk, are there any additional public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close public comments. There are no public hearings. That brings us to unfinished business. Item 13, Capistrano Beach Village Plan Update. Mr. Denny, do we have a staff report?
Yes, sir, we do. And Senior Planner Belinda Dinas has your staff report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. Good evening, Mayor Muller, members of the City Council, and members of the public. My name is Belinda Dinas, Project Manager, and I'm pleased to present to you the Capistrano Beach Village Plan Update. In the past 30 years, there have been a number of attempts to develop a land use plan for Doheny Village. It became evident that the current general plan and zoning ordinance adopted in 1991 have not been effective in guiding development for Doheny Village in the past 3 decades. The goal of this planning process has been to prepare land use regulations and development standards that create a more appropriate framework for the village. After the city received concerns from the community with the Doheny Village Plan draft form-based code in 2016, it was crucial to listen and learn from the village residents, property owners, and business owners. Beginning in 2017 in October, village stakeholders and city staff collaborated to inform, consult, involve, and empower community members in the visioning and land use process. Together, we shared about the area's deep-rooted history, and we evaluated opportunities and constraints associated with planning for the future of the village. Through this re-engagement process, it became evident that public policy, with vision and regulations, could not be successful without a solid foundation of this neighborhood's history and culture.
I don't feel bad. My tablet's not working either, so.
All right, I'll go ahead and move on. In March 2018, the City Council adopted guiding principles for the village, the historical downtown of Capistrano Beach. The following principles, shown on the slide that you can't see, were developed by the community and have served as a baseline for the proposed land use recommendations. The City Council was also directing staff to continue collaboration with stakeholders in a small working group, which was formed in July 2018. The group was tasked with developing a draft zoning code update and a beautification plan in a series of regular monthly meetings that were open to the public, noticed on the city's calendar, and publicized on social media. During these meetings, stakeholders brought forth their analysis of site conditions, and they provided recommendations on revisions to the city's existing zoning code. This timeline, I have the slide here, shows the working group's completed tasks from creating an action plan, line item reviews of land uses and development standards, and consideration of definitions and changes related to parking and residential density. After over a year of input, city staff drafted the zoning code update and capital improvement list attached to the staff report. It is important to note that the incorporation of public input into the draft documents have been the foundation at every step of the entire process. The draft zoning code update proposes a new chapter in the Dana Point zoning code called the Capistrano Beach Village Districts. The proposed chapter is similar in format to other zoning districts throughout the city, but these standards are unique and only applicable to the village. The draft chapter proposes to legalize existing non-conforming uses and modifies development standards to meet the existing pattern of development, which had been previously allowed under county jurisdiction. As a result, these changes will likely spur small and large-scale redevelopment in the area. The draft zoning map establishes 3 new zoning districts. In purple is the village commercial industrial, which would allow mixed-use light industrial and commercial uses, where industrial uses had not been allowed since the adoption of the Dana Point zoning code 30 years ago, but have existed since county jurisdiction. In red is Main Street, which includes properties that front Doheny Park Road. There are some existing properties with residential on upper floors, and so the intent is to allow mixed use rather than existing zoning standards for big box retail. In brown on the zoning map is Village Commercial Residential, which would allow horizontal mixed use, meaning that there could be commercial or residential uses allowed within this area. Currently, residential uses are only allowed as accessory to primary commercial or vertical mixed use. Existing residential properties wanting to improve and expand are limited because of their non-conforming status. At present, there are no changes proposed to the community facilities and recreation zoning districts. However, the city recognizes that the Capistrano Unified School District is seeking to submit a separate application for a specific plan area at the bus yard site. This timeline illustrates next steps in the zoning code update process. At this time, staff requests that the City Council reinitiate the environmental review process. It is anticipated that the environmental impact report take at least 9 months before the project returns to Planning Commission for review and for City Council for review and approval. Following City Council, we will then submit to the California Coastal Commission for a local coastal plan amendment. I'm at the top of page 7 if you have a copy of the presentation. Environmental impact report.
What page?
Top of page 7 in orange.
Thank you.
In January 2016, the City Council awarded a contract to Michael Baker International to prepare an environmental impact report for the Doheny Village Plan form-based code, and that contract has since lapsed in June 2018. Based on recent changes to the project, city staff requested a revised EIR scope and cost from the consultant. Some previously completed EIR work remains applicable to the revised project, and approximately $58,000 has been paid to date. Therefore, the remaining balance on the contract is $193,704. At the last month's meeting on November 9th, the City Council authorized application of Senate Bill 2 Planning Grant Program funds toward the village plan. The state of California has confirmed receipt of the city's grant application request for $160,000, which is anticipated to fund the majority of the village plan EIR. If needed, the remaining balance of the EIR contract will be covered by the Public Works and Community Development Department's operating budget and will have no impact on the general fund. The SB2 planning grant requires that the project be approved by City Council and scheduled for California Coastal Commission approval no later than June 30th, 2022. The working group also developed a draft capital improvement project list, which identifies recommendations for priority projects toward improving connectivity, beautification, traffic calming, and public parking in the village. The working group recommends that the highest priority capital improvement project is to enhance pedestrian and bicycle connectivity from Doheny Park Road to Pacific Coast Highway, which would connect the village to the beach. Rather than develop a formal beautification plan with prescribed design treatments and extensive construction at this time, the group sought to enhance aesthetics by proposing a public art and landscape programs to be implemented right away. The group formed the beautification committee to work on short-term projects to initiate by early 2020. Community members have presented concepts for potential public spaces and industrial-inspired sculptural art. They identified potential locations for mural art and color to bring interest and dimension to the area. Members also provided conceptual renderings to highlight the neighborhood identity through signage and wall art. On November 25th, 2019, the Planning Commission conducted a preliminary review and received a status update on the project. Commissioners asked for clarification on parking requirements, affordable housing incentives, residential density, setback requirements, and definitions of use. City staff will make minor edits to the draft based on their feedback. The name of the planning document also came up in discussion. To clarify, the area is commonly referred as both Doheny Village and the village in Capistrano Beach. It had been identified by community members early on in the outreach, and in response to feedback we received to emphasize the village is in Capistrano Beach. It is important to note that there is an omission to the code section on page 65 of the staff report under Development Standards Chart, item E for maximum height for the village commercial residential zone. It should read that a maximum height is limited to 3 stories, and currently, as written, it is not specified. Community members committed countless volunteer hours at every single one of our late night meetings. They also engaged with us in one-on-one talks and our group of walkabouts around the neighborhood. They were the ones surveying sites, compiling research, writing development standards, crafting renderings, and sharing so many firsthand historical accounts, all of which to highlight how important it is to preserve and enhance the village, Doheny Village, the heart of Capistrano Beach. Staff recommends that the City Council receive and file this staff report, direct staff to initiate the zoning code general plan and local coastal plan amendments for the village plan, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract between the city and Michael Baker International to prepare the environmental impact report for the village plan. With that, I would be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any public comments? Thank you. We have 3 public comments: Larry Robinson, Stephen Carpenter, and Teresa Bouvier. Come on up. Please state your name and city of residence for the record, please.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and council members, Larry Robinson, property owner, Capistrano Beach, business owner, Capistrano Beach. I've been 32 years, 1987, and it's a wonderful day that we're here today to actually consider and hopefully implement this plan. I want to personally acknowledge Belinda in terms of her great efforts and stewardship in terms of conducting the workshop. And I think we had very good input from the community, property owners and residents. And I encourage the council to support this. I think it's a great time that we finally have arrived at all this hard work and moving forward in terms of this new vision for the Doheny Village area, as we now call it, Capistrano Beach Village area. So I just want to add my name to those of others that encourage the council to adopt this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stephen Carpenter.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Stephen Carpenter, a resident of Capistrano Beach since 1959, so I think I've got most everybody beat here. First of all and utmost, I want to thank Belinda for her hard work and dedication and working with the Doheny Village Working Group as we've worked through here the last 2 years of working to accomplish something that unfortunately had to be reaccomplished. And we think we found it. And what I'm hoping is that the city council can, with everything that's been presented to you tonight, will move forward to pass so we can move this forward. There's a lot of property owners, there's a lot of businesses here that can benefit by this, which will tremendously help our city of Dana Point, Capistrano Beach, the village, Doheny Village. And that is what I've known it. As a child growing up, I used to live in the village, and I used to go to the old Sarah School up until the 3rd grade, until Palisades was built. So to see this area finally coming around to where people can invest in their property and benefit and really start benefiting the whole entire community of the village, I hope that the council finds it appropriate to move forward. And I ask you for a positive vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa Bouvier.
Hi, my name is Teresa Bobet. I'm a resident of Dana Point since 1986. I have property down in Capistrano Beach. First most, I apologize for Belinda. I can't believe that PowerPoint didn't work. She did an awesome job on it, and I'm going to ask if you can maybe put it on the website so people can go through it. It was very good. I saw it last week when they had for the City Planning Commission. So, and I want to thank you for your staff, Mark Denny, Belinda, and Matt Sinacori. They have been awesome to work with. We so appreciate it. We felt like we were being overrun, the businesses and the owners down in Doheny Village. We felt like the city wasn't listening to us and they were just doing what they wanted to do. And Belinda came along and she just encouraged us, and we are so thankful and appreciative that you're willing to listen to what we wanted and what we need, because this is our livelihood. This is our businesses. This is how we earn a living. And so we appreciate that. And I just want to applaud Belinda once again. She has done some incredible work. And the area, I think, has been cleaned up since we first started. Matt's been wonderful at going down there and cleaning up after hours. I don't know if you pay them by the hour, but they work a lot of hours. So
Don't give them any ideas.
so anyways, I just hope that we can move forward with this. And this has we've worked long and hard on this, and so has your staff. And so we appreciate the people and the hours that they've put into it. And we hope we can move forward on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, any additional public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comments. I'll call for a motion. Mr. Vixor,
I'll move the recommended action.
Mr. Federico.
Second.
All right, I'll bring it back to council for discussion. Have any comments? All right, Mr. Federico.
I would like to just briefly echo Teresa's comments that the PowerPoint presentation was almost as good as the plan itself. So it's too bad we didn't get to see it. And please take a look at it. It really does highlight how collaborative this plan was. And stepping away from all the nitnoid details and technicalities that we might get into on the zoning, ultimately what this plan
does is preserves the character of the village by taking what are essentially almost entirely now non-conforming uses and making them conforming so that current residents, business owners, and landowners can invest in their properties and improve them, maybe get some higher and better use out of them, but it really ultimately preserves today's residents, tenants, and owners down there. So thank you to all the residents who pitched in and not just pitched, you did all the heavy lifting on this. Thank you. And so I don't know how we don't send forward to an EIR a plan that was basically written by the people that live down there. It's good for our entire community and for all of our residents. So I will support this.
Thank you. Mr. Wyatt.
Yeah, so I also, I mean, we are at this time only being asked to fund the EIR, so that seems appropriate to me. I have a couple of questions, and I think just in how the process plays out from here. But first of all, I want to compliment Belinda too, that based on the feedback here and what I've heard others, we set out to change direction at the beginning of 2017 when we got a lot of feedback that we had a city dictated plan versus involving the people whose life and homes and so forth we were impacting. So we really did step back and involve them. So it sounds like the comments I have is we succeeded in getting people together and talking through. So that's terrific. And to echo Councilmember Federico's, investors need certainty, right? You can't invest in your business, buy property, improve your property if you don't have the certainty of where you're going. So this maybe brings the most certainty to those businesses that are operating down there at the moment and so forth, that they can actually go invest and do the things they want to do because they now aren't non-conforming and wondering, what the implications of improvements are. But also, as we lay out the plan and you look for the rest of, people to buy homeowners' property be improved, seeing direction with certainty is maybe the biggest thing we will have accomplished by getting this plan moving forward. I have a number of worries in the plan, not that we didn't do it, but the EIR has to move forward in concert with some other things. We don't yet know the infrastructure implications of all the plan. We'll have to go through and make sure that we either have or can bring the infrastructure to support the density and other things that we're doing in. So those have an impact on us, and we'll have to work through that. We're proposing exceptions to the parking. We'll have to go through and work through the implications of that because there is no place for spillover parking. I mean, this is a pretty bounded area in terms of access, so it's got to park itself, and the businesses won't succeed if the residents spill over and take all the business parking, and the residents won't be happy if the businesses spill over and take all the residential parking. So we're going to have to work through that. We've struggled with that repeatedly in the city, so we have work to do to make sure that we spend the time necessary to get it right. There's no public parking facility proposed for shared public parking. So we run the same issue that we had in the town center, where there's a fair amount of surface parking, but it isn't controlled and accessible to the public in general. And so we actually need some thought into how to have a more creative solution to access parking there, or what to do about that. So I think it's one of those. And I suspect the parking and the traffic related will impact the EIR. So it's got to happen in concert. we have one situation where we allow the building height to go up, and we have the uncontrolled density go up. Both of those have implications on other parts of the city possibly, but certainly, even though this is a very specific overlay, we're going to have to go through and understand the implications of them. If we change them at any point, what does it do to our EIR? So while I'm thrilled that it's gotten here and we're moving finally, and the connectivity and just getting the artists out to do the design so that you can actually see what it will look like, I think we need to move as quickly as we can on. I do want to make sure that there are concerns and that we walk through and understand, because we're going to affect this plan certainly before it's approved. And we don't want to cut all these people who have worked so hard and by your leadership to bring it out of that further discussion when we have to make changes. So keeping the working group so that as we work through these things, that we can involve the people who got us to this point and help them work with us to work through any other changes that may be required from the EIR and to deal with problems that will occur that haven't been anticipated yet, is what I would really ask doing that. So thank you.
Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. Well, okay, not to be redundant here, but I'm going to echo what we've heard pretty much already. Thank you, Belinda. Thank you, staff. You've all done, and the working group, you've all done yeoman's work here just to get us to the point where we're not beating each other up over this plan and moving forward to an area that needs revamping. So I'm happy that we're at that point now. And like Paul said, we're just dealing with the EIR. And I think that should go forward, and we need to keep this process moving. I also, as Paul stated, have some concerns with the plan itself that we will need to address at some point. Doesn't sound like that's what we're doing here tonight. So I will save my comments in depth for more appropriate time. But I did have a couple things I wanted to bring up because people have asked questions and they want clarification on that. First, the importance of this is if you could explain to people that it's now this non-conforming and it's gone to legal and why that's such a big deal down there, please.
Councilmember Lewis, thank you. The importance of legalizing existing properties is related to the fact that of uncertainty. Existing property owners are unable to develop their properties because there are limitations in the zoning code that either limit the amount of expansion that they could do because they're considered non-conforming structures or uses. And so there is no ability because the zoning code prohibits it. With that, the importance of legalizing the development standards offers the property owners to keep what's out there now and preserving the existing framework and structures that exist today. So when we look at legalizing in the code, we're saying that we want to preserve the structures that are there, the historic integrity and whatnot. So it's important to this group that they can even invest in their properties. Oftentimes, non-conforming uses cannot find funding to make improvements to their property because of their non-conforming status. So there's a number of challenges associated with being non-conforming.
So previously, if someone, say, wanted to do some upgrades because it was non-conforming, they then had to conform to all the building code that they weren't conforming to before, which discouraged people improving their property. Is that correct? And now they can, because their non-conforming is going to be legal under this plan, they can make changes and improvements without having to redo basically the whole building to conform to a building code that they weren't built to. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think that's an important part, important for people to understand why that was so important. The Cusd Bus Yard, a couple of people asked me, that's a completely separate plan, right? Separate
Correct.
issues, nothing to do with this.
No, there are no changes proposed to the current zoning for the bus yard, and so separate application is anticipated.
And this plan does not impact that, the bus yard for specifically, I looked at the 1,100 residential units. That's just for this village area, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the 1,100, can you tell us how you got to that number?
Sure. At the planning commission meeting, one of the council or the planning commissioners had asked what the maximum build out for density would be, assuming that the density prescribed in the draft code would be built out in its entirety. And so that estimated number, if all properties in the village turned over and demolished everything and rebuilt as new, the maximum number would be 1,100 units.
Okay, and that's based on this like density here of 30 dwelling units per acre, 40 dwelling units that I see in here. So if that gets built out to the density specified in the plan, we're anticipating 1,100 units.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you'll forgive me. It said 30 to 40 dwelling units per acre. I don't have any mental picture of what that means and how that compares to the density of other residential areas in the city. So if you could just kind of put that in context for me.
Sure. And so, for example, the project that's currently under construction at Prado West, that is approximately 48 dwelling units per acre.
So that's what we know is Raintree, right?
Correct.
And that's how many?
48 dwelling units.
48. So I think this plan was somewhere between 30 and 40.
Correct.
So it'll be a little less dense. That's the maximum density. People can obviously build to less density, right?
Sure, absolutely. And there are existing properties in the village that have greater than 30 dwelling units per acre. For example, there is the Harbor Walk condominiums that are located off of Camino Capistrano. Those units tucked behind there, that's 36 dwelling units per acre.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so one of the things that came up in the town center plan was aggregation of lots. And when I was talking to a couple of the people who were in the town center plan subcommittee, what they said was, well, we didn't anticipate that lots would be aggregated. When we made this plan, we knew that there were small lots and we thought, okay, there'll be these different buildings on each one and it'll give town center a kind of a look because each builder will build something a little different. They didn't anticipate somebody buying up blocks and blocks and building a Raintree sort of thing. Is there any provision in this plan for that to happen or not happen?
Absolutely. And so the Doheny Village Working Group made it a point to develop standards that were specifically for small lot development to encourage existing small lots. And in the village itself, there are several lots that are only 20 feet or 25 feet wide. So the limitations for development is very unique. And so they're all owned by different property owners. It would be very difficult to aggregate lots and build something to current code standards. And so the working group made sure that the proposed development standards would allow for current property owners to be able to develop something reasonable at the site and also to provide adequate setbacks and parking as well.
But if a developer wanted to come in and buy a large swath, they could.
Correct.
Okay, so there's nothing in the plan that, says we can't build these McMansions. It's set up so that if you have a small lot, you can build on it. But if a developer wants to buy, a whole block, a whole, area, that can happen.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, and I echo the comments that Paul made about parking, because every time we do a plan, the three big hot buttons are parking, height, and traffic, right? So height, we'll get to that in a second. Parking, I mean, I feel like we kind of missed the boat on town center by not building parking initially and shared parking so that we don't have all these consequences of no parking. And here we have, you know, an area that's going to be very commercial and it's bigger and it, you know, could be kind of the commercial center of Dana Point, especially since it comes right off the 5 freeway. And I see that, you know, we're looking at 1 parking stall for studio to 1 bedroom and 2 parking stalls for 2 bedrooms to 5 bedrooms and 3 for 6 bedrooms up. But, you know, that doesn't take into account guest parking and all the other things that go with parking. So I wonder, what's the thought about having parking there that, you know, people can come in off the freeway or wherever they're coming from and park and have enough parking that it's not spilling over into areas, or has enough parking so that people who want to come and shop there aren't discouraged because they can't find parking. Is there thoughts about putting some sort of public shared parking structure or area in this plan?
The working group's focus was to develop standards for private property, and so we had not gotten into a discussion about public. However, we do call out in the draft capital improvement plan list, that's also an attachment to your staff report, multiple locations for expanding existing public parking, in particular along Victoria Boulevard on both sides of Victoria, so creating more perpendicular parking, as well as along Sepulveda. So that would be an increase in public parking on our in our public streets.
Okay, well, to the extent that, you know, we can think about putting parking in the plan first so that we're not at the back end going, oh, we need parking, and we have people complaining because their parking spaces at night are taken up with, you know, employees, or even employee parking, so that the spots that are there can be for customers and residents. But I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed. Building height, yeah, I echo building height, 50 feet. I mean, we're all kind of freaking out with 40 in town center. Now, I recognize that there's not the view issue here that we have in town center, but I did look at it and it said 30 feet, 40 feet, or 50 feet. And then underneath it, it said 3 stories. So that will now say and 3 stories. There'll be some sort of conjunctive word there, like an and versus an or a nothing, right?
It is limited to 3 stories, so that's the edit that I'd mentioned in my presentation.
So, yeah, right now it just says, you know, a height and 3 stories. So will there be the word and? So that it will be clear, if anybody's interpreting this, that yes, it could go that height, but it also must be 3 stories, that those 2 things have to combine.
Understood.
Okay. Let's see. And at some point, what is our plans for public outreach, working groups, now that we actually have a plan, to go take this plan to residents and say, here's our working plan, let's get some feedback? What are our plans there?
So once we initiate the EIR process, we'll need to bring forth the draft that's before you so that we can do the proper analysis for that. In the EIR process, there are opportunities for public input as well.
Well, are there going to be like workshops where this, like we did with the Opticos, where the plan is, you know, distributed and there's, you know, someone from the plan, and then people can come and look at the plan and ask questions of whoever it is, probably you, whoever it is that's kind of shepherding this plan through, so that we have actual workshops where there can be give and take from public. Is that planned?
Yes, we actually set aside funding in our SB2 application to require additional public input and workshops.
Okay, and how many are you thinking? If you have a number? One, two?
At least.
At
Sure.
least, okay. And then, just so residents know, where would they go to see when and where these workshops are taking place?
The city calendar is always updated with the even the working group meetings, and there's also a dedicated webpage for Doheny Village on the city's website, and that's regularly updated every month.
So if someone goes to the city website, there's a click onto Doheny Village?
Correct.
Because, I mean, no one knows to look for a workshop unless they know there's a workshop, so we have kind of a chasing our tail thing. Is that also put in the Dana Point Times? That there'll be a workshop?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see. And then, just so I'm clear and everybody else is clear, we're just talking the EIR basically, and this will be coming back to the Planning Commission and the council, right?
Correct.
Okay. I think that was all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I support this. I'm going to vote to move it forward. So I just want to explore a different issue, and that's the name change. This is you've been working on this for a couple of years now, right? And probably had 15 or 20 working group meetings. When did this idea come up?
At the very first meeting in October 2017, the first comment was, where did Doheny Village come from? We are Capo Beach. And so that was from the very first meetings that we always had. It was certain community members always made it clear that this is Capistrano Beach. The post office says Capistrano Beach. The center rock in the middle of the median says Capistrano Beach. But it's also been the village, beginning in terms of cityhood. It's always been referenced as Doheny Village. The area has changed in name over time since the turn of the century, from San Juan by the Sea to Sarah Village, etc. And so staff has no preference in terms of the name change.
When I first saw it, my attitude is, what's in a name? But then I heard one of our speakers get up and say he's been here since the 50s, and it's always been known as Doheny Village. And it gets me thinking that the merchants there call themselves the Doheny Village Merchants Association. I can think of businesses down there with Doheny Village in the name. Now, I wonder, how they would feel about this name change. So I was wondering, really, what's the rationale? Is it simply there was a comment that was made at one of the first meetings, or was this really extensively discussed, or is there anything to be accomplished by this?
Not at all.
Okay.
We've received multiple feedback from various community members that this is Capistrano Beach, but we can always change it back.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to explore. It did occur to me after hearing the speaker that maybe there is something to a name. So that was my only question. I'll be voting for this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sork. This is interesting to me because I was on the original Doheny Village committee that was looking at form-based code. And I met one of the merchants down there, property owners, Bob Shade, and his cousin Steven spoke tonight. And he and I kind of hit it off. We talked about it. He was expressing a lot of concerns about form-based code. And he called me one day and he said, Joe, we got a problem down in the village. I said, well, what's going on, Bob? I thought we were moving along. Everything was going great. And he goes, no, you need to come meet with the merchants. And I walked in and a lot of them are here tonight. And it was a hostile environment, to say the least. It was hostile. And, but after speaking to them, it was pretty clear that they weren't against rezoning. They wanted to protect their businesses, and not just today, but tomorrow. And if they want to, turn them over to their children at some point, sell them, that they didn't want to be encumbered by new zoning laws. They wanted to reinvest, but they couldn't because they were non-conforming, and they would even at that point they were non-conforming. They would have to come up to code, which would actually run most of them out of business. So at the end of it, I think we were all not all the way on the same page, but we were going down that path because I did understand what they're looking for, and I said, there shouldn't be a problem. We can codify that, and we'll figure that out. And that's when I went back to Mark and said, do you need to get some of our planning folks down there and start talking with these guys? So I really appreciate all the work the staff did on that. It was really, it was something that I'm really proud of because it was such a contentious issue at the time, but I knew if we got the right group of people together, we could work through it. A couple of things that you heard tonight, and I've mentioned this in other meetings, that until we figure out the parking, I'm not going to support anything down there. So we're going to have to figure that out. And I know that's going to be part of the EIR process. So I will support moving this forward tonight because I think it's the right thing. Mr. Victoric hit on the naming issue. That kind of caught me off guard. One of the issues I've always had in town and up in my part of the city, I live in Monarch Beach. We don't call it Monarch Beach. We call it Dana Point. And our monument says Dana Point and Monarch Beach under it. And one of the things I think is when we talk about Capitol Beach, I think that creates a divisiveness within this community. And I think we need to take that into consideration, that maybe we do need to go back to Doheny Village and get everybody on the same page. We're not Dana Point. We're not Capitol Beach. We're not Monarch Beach. We are all Dana Point. And if we put it in there, Village of Capitol Beach, if you want to put that down there, that's fine, but it should be Doheny Village. And when I say Village of Capitol Beach or whatever you want to call it, that could be on the stone, the entrance stone or the monument. So that was my big thing, because I actually called a couple of merchants when I saw that I know have Doheny in their name, and they were not happy about that name change. I mean, we're doing things to try to help these businesses out, and by changing a name, making them change their name, that can cost them a substantial amount of money, not just in changing letterhead and mailing addresses and things, but in marketability as well. So I think we need to be conscientious about that. I know we don't have to change it tonight. I think we probably should change it back to Doheny Village and then have the discussion moving forward and let the merchants come forward, because they're going to be the most impacted by that change. But with that, I'm going to support this going forward. I think this is a great plan. It just shows that when a community does come together, we can get things done. We can come to an agreement that everybody's on the same page. And I want to thank the staff for all of the hard work, all of you that went in, that you spent a lot of time on this. And I think we're finally going in the right direction. So thank you very much. With that, I'll go ahead and call the vote. It passes 5-0. Thank you. Congratulations, Belinda. Keep moving forward. We're getting there. All right, that brings us to new business. Item 14 was deleted by me, and I want to explain a little bit about that. We invited Capital Unified to come and present. I asked Mr. Denny to do that, and then I talked to the superintendent directly. And they were concerned that they did not have enough time to prepare a presentation to the council, which kind of caught me off guard because they've been presenting this all over the district for the last few months. And they were concerned about some of the questions I had. And again, you've been working on this for 4 years. You should have been able to answer these questions. But in deference to them wanting to push this off to a later date, so they have time, I said, okay, we'll just go ahead and delete it from the council tonight. I appreciate Mr. Alexander coming in tonight. He was in the opposition. I was going to let them both present. But because the school district wasn't here, we cut it down to 3 minutes, and he could do it in public comment if that's how he chose to do it. So that's why that was removed. And that'll bring us on to item 15, the solid waste disposal contract amendment. Mr. Denny.
The city attorney has our staff report.
All right, Mr. Munoz.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. What you have before you is an amendment to 2 agreements. The city, for all practical purposes, has a single franchise agreement with CR&R, but for some historical reasons, it's broken into 2 separate agreements. One deals with what's generally referred to as temporary waste, So it's like construction demolition projects, or if you want to clean up your garage and you bring out a small bin. And then the other agreement deals with all the other franchise issues, whether it's at your home or your business. The state of California has adopted a variety of rules and regulations over the last couple of years dealing with recycling issues, primarily what's known as organic cycling. Organics are food waste, green waste, those types of things. Sorry.
Time to make
my
the
time's
donuts.
The key provisions that have been adopted by the state that are impacting cities are three particular pieces of legislation. One's AB 1826, which requires organics recycling at commercial businesses. One is AB 1594, which prohibits using green waste as what's known as alternative daily cover at the landfill. That's a very significant issue for us, by the way, because Orange County cities have been taking advantage of disposing green waste for free at the county landfill for years. The haulers collect it, grind it up, and then put it down at the end of the day. Each day at the landfill is covered, and it doesn't count as disposal, and it's free. This new legislation has a very significant impact to costs for the hauler if they have to now take the material somewhere where it can be composted or otherwise diverted, and you have to pay to deposit it now instead of being able to deposit it for free. And then the third piece of legislation is something called SB 1383, which short summary requires organics recycling at residences. We've had quite a bit of discussion with CR&R over these issues. There's a very significant and immediate impact to their cost, which understandably they'd like to recover immediately. And we've been able to successfully negotiate a program whereby the costs will be phased in over the next 5 years. In order to accomplish that, one of the things that's been proposed before you in the was now a third amendment to the agreements. There's been 2 prior amendments. Is to extend the term of the agreement by 3 years. That allows in essence, $1 a year increase to occur to rates over that time period instead of having a single significant impact all at once for residences. One of the advantages of the city of continuing the term of the agreements is that all these new bits of legislation are so new that the marketplace hasn't really adjusted to them yet. We will be in a better position to negotiate a new contract, whether we go out to bid or renegotiate with CR&R, after there's been a few years of the marketplace seeing what happens to the cost of recyclables, whether new technologies come up, whether new uses for the end products come up. And so in order to both spread out the cost and to be in a better negotiating position in the future, staff's recommending the extension of both agreements. The temporary waste agreement needs to be extended, as well as the general franchise agreement, so that both agreements terminate at the same time, and we'll be in a position to have the maximum flexibility in the future to negotiate either a single agreement or multiple agreements, whatever the council's desire might be at that time. A couple of key provisions of the agreement that I think are worthy of mentioning is that the costs that are being proposed, based on an analysis we've done, keep Dana Point's rates lower than the rates in what's known as the Quad Cities. San Juan Capistrano, San Clemente, Laguna Niguel, and Dana Point are considered the Quad Cities. Our current agreement has a guarantee in it that our residential rates will be the lowest in those Quad Cities, or will be equal to or lower than the rates in any other cities. And that guarantee continues on even with the increases that unfortunately we're going to be seeing because of the state mandates we have. From a commercial perspective, there'll be some changes in the way recycling occurs. Rather than putting everything into a single bin and having it taken away to a facility where it's sorted out, we'll be seeing separate bins for recycled materials, separate bins for food waste, and separate bins for green waste. Restaurants, for instance, will get bins that are designated just for food waste scraps. Multifamily properties or commercial properties will have bins that are designated for a combination of recyclable materials. there's going to be an interesting impact where people will have to get new services, which on their face, someone might seem more expensive, but the reduction of trash service should offset, in most cases, the increase in other recycling services. So based on the analysis that was provided to us, the overall impact is, on a citywide basis, is net neutral or close to net neutral. There will be some instances where, based on the unique circumstances of individual customers, they may have a lesser impact or greater impact than that. But overall, that's the impact we're seeing. Those are the highlights of the agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Madam Clerk, any public comment?
No, I do not, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and bring it back to council for a motion. Mr. Wyatt.
I move the proposed action.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Vixork seconds. All right, bring it back. Any comments? Mr. Federico?
Just very briefly, I'd like to thank the staff, Public Works and City Attorney and Mr. Denny for really, and trash pickup is never exciting, I guess, right? It's not a fun thing to talk about
Unless they
or
don't
listen
pick it
to. No offense, Mr. Munoz. But this is an innovative approach that they took, and it's a great deal for our residents. I'll summarize it. We've gone through this in detail, the council have, and a lot of hard work went into getting a good deal for our residents. So I appreciate that on behalf of our residents. Thanks, guys.
Ms. Lewis?
Thank you. Yes, I just want to say thanks for all the hard work. This is really important, and you don't know it's really important until you don't have it. And as Mr. Federico said, the council has been hearing about this for probably 2-3 closed sessions. So it's not like we just got this and, we're hearing about it and we're saying, fine, okay, we've discussed this. It's been brought to us. We've discussed it in detail, and I think it's a good contract, and I'm here to support it. Thank you.
Mr. Vixork? No? No comments. Got it. All right. Mr. Wyatt?
I just want to comment too in support of it that I think the fact that we took a proactive innovative approach, we should compliment. I mean, one of the things we've been trying to look at is our contract is still got till the end of 2021 essentially to run, but looking at what we wanted to do now to prepare for the changes that were coming and to try to find an innovative way to get there with lessen the overall impact on everybody and kept us in a negotiating position. I thought was a terrific look ahead approach. And so I want to thank staff for coming back and saying we should deal with this now, and we should deal with it in a way that we can absorb it without having a huge impact on our residents and our businesses. So thank you.
I want to echo everything that was just said tonight. There was a moment there where it looked like our rates to our residents could go up pretty quick. And I want to, Mr. Ruffridge from CR&R is out here this evening, and I want to thank him for all the hard work and all the creativity that went into putting this program together, to take a look at what the true impacts are going to be of this green waste. Nobody really knows. It's always the unintended consequences when legislation like this is passed, and it's a good idea to have a time frame to actually kind of sit back, work together with it, figure out what the true implications are going to be. So in 5 years, we'll be better prepared to understand what the overall impact of this program is going to be. So I want to thank CR&R for all their hard work, Mr. Munoz for all the hard work, staff. With that, I'm going to go ahead and take the vote. And that passes unanimously. Congratulations. Good job, staff. Thank you, Mr. Ruffridge. All right. That brings us to item 16, adoption of a resolution of the City Council to amend the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority Joint Powers Agreement. Mr. Denny.
Mr. Killebrew has our staff report tonight.
All right, Mr. Killebrew.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the city has participated in a joint powers agreement where members of the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority basically pool resources for insurance purposes. So our insurance is provided by this group. We've been in there since 1989. The proposed amendment tonight essentially boils down to agreeing to put into the JPA agreement the requirement that should the JPA dissolve, all the members will be responsible for the JPA's public retirement liabilities. So it's state law, and this is just getting us in compliance with that. So if you have any other questions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any
Available to
public comment? I'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back for a motion. I'll move the item. Mr. Rixor seconds. Any comments? Mr. Federico, Ms. Lewis? Oops, hold on here.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Killebrew, so I was just listening. The state law requires that members of JPA be responsible for the pension. So the JPA we're in, that this will impact is which?
The California Joint Powers Insurance Authority, you probably hear more often referred to as CJPIA.
Okay, and how many employees does it have, and what's the pension, liability that we're potentially taking on here?
Well, the number of employees, I'm not informed as far as the exact number. It's been several years since I looked at
Okay.
their workforce. But their total unfunded liability for their workforce is $3.4 million. Their net assets, after taking into account their projected liabilities, is around $125 million. So this is talking about if the entity dissolves.
Right.
And there's any unfunded liability at that point in time, the north of 125 members that are in it would get allocated a portion of that unfunded liability. So of the 3.4 million, it gets split between 125 members, and we're one of the smaller members.
And this is how we get our insurance for the
Yes.
city, right? So I
Yes.
mean, it's obviously critical. We need this. And we do this because it's cost-effective insurance for us.
Yes.
And
And the reality is, if it dissolved today, we would owe it regardless of the JPA agreement,
we would owe,
a portion of the unfunded liability, because the state law went into effect January 1st.
okay, so we're just putting in the agreement what's already in state law.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a reason we need to amend it to put something in an agreement that's by state law required anyway?
The original JPA agreement had language in it that said the members were not liable for these pension liabilities.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wyatt.
Just a couple of comments. First of all, this just cleans up the language that it's a fact at any rate with the thing. My only thinking on this as we move forward, knowing this, and we do have representative on the board, so to continue to look like everyone else is, to make sure we work with the board to manage that number, so that ideally, if they, like we are, just the city need to set up a 115 trust or something to hold some of that money, so that if it happened, or change something, I just would recommend back as whoever the board member going forward, maybe it could change here, but that we continue to look at that number and bring it back when we're reporting on various things that we have a liability for. So I think that's the best thing we can do. We're probably on the hook for that no matter what, but let's be clear that we don't want that number to get bigger. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I've been dealing with this with multiple agencies that I sit on, so I don't really have a lot to say. It is a state law, so thank you for the presentation. Mr. Killebrew, and I'll go ahead and take the vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us on to the 2020 City Council meeting schedule. Mr. Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city clerk has prepared a meeting schedule for 2020 that does include the deletion, which has already been decided by the council under resolution of the second meeting in December. Note that we've also taken off Election Day. Some of you might be busy that day because it happens to be on a council meeting night. And so if you have any questions, we're available for them.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any public comment? Close public comment. Bring it back for a motion. Mr. Wyatt. Oops, let me turn that on.
Yes, I approve adopting the council, the calendar as.
All right, Mr.
submitted.
Exhort.
I'll second.
All right. Any more discussion by council? All right, go ahead and take the vote. Oops, I'm sorry, Deborah. I'm sorry.
No, no problem. So we took off the second meeting of December, right? And how about January? The first meeting of January? I see the first Tuesday is the 7th. Are we?
Correct. That's correct.
We're meeting or not meeting?
Not meeting.
Not meeting. Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'll call a vote. That passes unanimously. All right, that brings us to the highlight of the evening. I'm just kidding. City Council reorganization. Madam Clerk, go ahead and there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to call for nominations for the position of mayor.
All right, Mr. Federico.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think great products like the Doheny Village Plan we talked about tonight are a result in part from clear and concise guidance that we give to staff and then get out of their way. And I think that starts with effective, efficient, well-planned and well-run meetings. And to that end, and because of his demonstrated ability to effectively and efficiently run meetings, I would like to nominate Councilmember Vic Sorick for the position of mayor.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that one. Ms. Lewis. Oops, hold on. Where'd you go?
Yes, thank you. Well, it's my pleasure and honor to nominate our Mayor Pro Tem, who's been our Mayor Pro Tem twice, by the way, and has not served as mayor yet. And as I think Mr. Vizorek has said previously, this is largely a ceremonial position. And so I would like to see Mr. Wyatt have his turn. We don't want him to be always a bridesmaid, never a bride. So I nominate Mr. Wyatt.
Thank you. Any additional nominations? I'll go ahead and close the nominations. Madam Clerk, would you take the vote
Okay, so we'll call for the first
for
nomination.
the first nomination first?
Okay, and that the nomination is for
Councilmember Vic Sorick.
Councilmember Vic Sorick, please. I'll-
And that passes 3-2. Congratulations, Mayor Vic Sorick. Get out of your way.
Oh, we're on. Okay. Thank you. Thank you to my colleagues for supporting me. And the first thing I'd like to do as the mayor is open the floor to, do I call for nominations? Do you need to say anything or do I just go ahead?
You may do the,
All right. Well, then
honors.
I will open the nominations for Mayor Pro Tem by nominating Councilmember Federico. Oh, I'm just learning it.
I'll take care of it.
Okay. I'll second that.
So, okay. Are there any other nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? Don't seeing no other nominations. I'll go ahead and close the nominations and call for the vote. And that passes 4-1. Congratulations, Mayor Pro Tem Federico. Okay. Okay, just picking this up for the first time. Let's see. Okay, now next on the agenda is the recognition of the outgoing mayor. So why don't, if I can ask Councilman Miller to come join me. Festival of Wales parade and the turkey trot got rained on.
We're in a
So,
drought. What do you want me to do? I call for rain.
so anyways, that was my biggest complaint. I promise to do better. Anyways, having said that, it's been a good year. And, looking back, it's hard to look back a year and see what things were like back then. But, he had some pretty big shoes to fill, and but he did it well. And, when Joe took over as mayor, we had done a survey of our residents, and we had a 91% approval rating. Things were going in the right direction. So when you think about it, that makes things kind of hard. There's only one direction to go or stay the same. But I can tell you something about Joe. He wasn't just content with staying the same and maintaining the status quo. He wanted to keep moving forward and make things even better than they were. And I think he's done that. And I'll just give you a couple quick examples. Some of them were right here tonight, seeing how he moved the city forward. You look at the Doheny Village plan. That just happened tonight. We are moving forward on that. There's a couple other things. Really, one of the biggest things we do is taking care of the financial situation of the city. And you did a fantastic job of that. During Mayor Miller's term, we not only finished our financial policies, we also passed a 2-year balanced budget. Not just balanced, but a surplus as well. So I want to congratulate you on that. But I have a few more things to say. That's just what he did as mayor for this city. Many of you may know he's also a father and a husband, and he spends full time doing that as well. He's got 2 great kids, make sure they're getting up in the morning, getting them to school, taking them to his sports practices, taking them to the doctor, whatever needs to be done. Joe's there doing it. That's while he's being mayor. And I'll tell you, being mayor can become a full-time job, but he did it in a fantastic manner while also performing those other duties. But I'm not just going to stop there. Joe didn't just serve his family and our city. He did things for Orange County, for the greater community, for the greater good of the county. And again, just a couple of examples. He serves on a couple of countywide boards that are extremely important to the people here in Dana Point. One of those is TCA, the toll roads. Obviously, transportation is something extremely important to everyone here in South County. And Joe took a real leadership position in focusing on a couple things. I'll mention one of the things that I know happened while you're on the TCA board was the successful moving forward of the 241-91 connector. And I'll give you a chance to speak about that if you want to a little bit. But it's not just that. He also secured a seat on those 2 agencies. And again, took that on himself to go out and do that for the people of our city. So, I mean, that's just an example of the selflessness and the leadership that he displayed. And of course, one other thing I'm thinking of, I look out there, he's also the chair of the Orange County Fire Authority. So not only was he serving as the mayor, but also leading the Orange County Fire Authority. And they also faced their own issues with unfunded pension liability, I believe, which took some action on that. So the point is, this is a man who's dedicated from the time he gets up till the time he goes to bed to serving his family, his city, the greater county. So I just want to say thank you and congratulations on a job well done. Thanks. If you'd like to say anything, I'll give it.
Thanks. I need to step out of the mayor's seat more often. That was fantastic. Nobody ever talks about me like that. I really want to appreciate or say thank you for all those kind words. I do truly love what I'm doing. It was great being the mayor. It was more work than I thought it was going to be. I don't really recommend being a chair of a big agency like the Fire Authority and the mayor at the same time because it takes a lot of time. But it was fun. Both those agencies are really interesting. The transportation aspect of what I've been doing has been incredibly rewarding, learning more about things that don't just happen in South County, but North County and Central County as well. It was just a real privilege and joy to be the mayor of this great city for the last year. We got a lot of good things done. You know, Mayor Vic just touched on a few of them. We got that, and then we had some trials and tribulations along the way, but that's all part of it. I mean, that's part of what makes this job so great is how you're going to manage that and how do you navigate those. So I really want to thank everybody. I want to thank the council for selecting me as their mayor last year. I want to thank staff for all the hard work you put in, making my job a little bit easier. Actually, you made my job very easy because they're an incredible staff. So thank you so much, and good luck to our new mayor, Mayor Vic Sorg.
Actually, don't go on. The reason I stood next to him and didn't leave him alone for that speech is I forgot to give him his plaque. So I don't really have anything further to say than what I did say, but I do want to once again present you with the plaque. It says Joseph L. Miller, Mayor, City of Dana Point, December 2018 to December 2019, and it has the gavel on it with his name. So here you go. Congratulations.
Thank you. Cool.
Okay, we'll move on with the agenda. It actually takes us to council reports, including city-related meetings attended. So I will go around the horn and ask for council reports. Start with Mayor Pro Tem Federico.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lewis.
Thank you. Well, I had one
No.
comment, but now I have a second. And wow. I just want to say I am really ashamed of this council today, this council majority. I can't tell you how badly I feel. I feel like we never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity here. We have somebody who has given 3 years. He does yeoman's work. We all turn to him. He did the homeless plan. He spent hours with Mr. Federico. And yet, for a ceremonial position, he was passed up as his turn to be mayor. You've been mayor, I've been mayor. Mr. Wyatt has not had his chance yet to be mayor before his term is up. And he was, for no reason, passed up. And I just want you to know, Paul, I'm really sorry. I feel terrible. I am ashamed, really ashamed. to be on this council tonight and to sit here in front of you and applaud and pretend that I'm happy, because I'm not. The other comment that I had was I wanted to straighten out the record on CUSD and why they weren't here, because I also talked to Kirsten Vitale and one of the trustees. And yes, they have been doing presentations, but they were asked some very specific questions on the Thursday afternoon and the Friday evening before the Thanksgiving week that the whole entire school is closed. And they were asked for the first time on Thursday before their vacation, oh, could you come to the city council on December 3rd to talk about your school bond, a very important issue. And then, by the way, you know, our Mayor Mueller gave them some very specific questions. I also want to say that and I know Mr. Wyatt, had no idea that the CUSD was being contacted. So we didn't get a chance to give questions to them either, which would have had more questions that they would have had to answer. But Ms. Superintendent explained to me that they want to be here. They want to be a good partner. They want to share the information, but they want to have the opportunity to answer all of our questions and be able to speak to each of the council members and get their questions. And it just wasn't going to be enough time with the entire week of closure. And so I didn't want to leave the impression that they just were snubbing us, that they've been going all over the school district giving this canned presentation. That wasn't what they anticipate doing here. They want to be able to actually answer our specific questions. And I do have some specific questions, and maybe some other council members might too. So I anticipate that they probably will be here sometime before the election, and there's plenty of time since it's not till March.
Thank you. Councilman Wyatt.
Yes, I've turned in my list of reports or my meetings to the city clerk, and I have nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Miller.
Just once again, I want to thank you all for your support over the year. It's been really interesting, a lot of fun. I have turned in my list of meetings. And congratulations. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I have nothing to report tonight. Thank you again to my colleagues. And with that, I will turn to the staff reports, starting with the city manager, Mr. Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's going to be a busy weekend in Dana Point this weekend. Boat parade starts this weekend. It's this Friday and Saturday night, and the following Friday and Saturday night. Winterfest and the tree lighting is at La Plaza Park Saturday, rain or shine. The report that I just saw said 30% showers in the morning, Saturday morning, but we will have tents and tarps up, so plenty of place for people to be out of the rain but still enjoy a bit of the holiday spirit. And then, of course, the Pines Park tree lighting is on Monday evening, and we hope to see all of you there. And we wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Denny. Mr. City Attorney.
I'd just like to report from closed session this evening in connection with our discussion on the Seaside Inn matter that the receiver is in the process of preparing a report that he'll be submitting to the court with recommendations on how to proceed forward. We anticipate that report will be completed and filed with the court and therefore public in the next 2 weeks, probably, certainly before Christmas. I expect it to be available. And once it is, we will put out a press release and make the report publicly available. Concludes my report.
Thank you. And I've just been reminded that members of the public are welcome to join us after the meeting for cake right outside the city council chambers. With that, that will bring us to the adjournment. The next regular meeting of the city council will be on January 21st, 2020 at 5 o'clock right here in the city council chamber. With that, we are adjourned.